Trump renews his tariff threat as liberal leadership hopefuls make their case in French. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
He's at it again at a news conference yesterday alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron. U.S. President Donald Trump said his administration is on track to impose tariffs on Canada as soon as next week.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame our leadership for allowing it to happen.
There was a free trade agreement that saw the United States renegotiate NAFTA with Canada and Mexico. That deal became known as CUSMA, the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. It was signed in 2018 by then U.S. President Donald Trump.
You know, who can blame them if they made these great deals with the United States, took advantage of the United States on manufacturing, on just about everything. Every aspect that you could imagine they took advantage of. I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night, and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this? So the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. All we want is reciprocal. We want reciprocity. We want to have the same. So if somebody charges us, we charge them. It's very simple, but it'll be very good for our country. Our country will be extremely liquid and rich again.
Imposing tariffs on all Canadian exports to the United States was given a 30-day reprieve after Trump said he secured concessions from Canada on border security. The 30-day reprieve is supposed to expire March 4th. That's a week from today. And then additional tariffs on Canadian exports on steel and aluminum are supposed to be imposed on March 12th. Meanwhile, in Montreal, Donald Trump wasn't on the debate stage, but he featured prominently as the 4 remaining candidates in the Liberal leadership race debated one another in French. Chrystia Freeland claimed she met a 4-year-old girl in Saskatoon who asked her if she could stop Trump from invading Canada.
I met a little 4-year-old girl. She asked me whether I could prevent Trump from invading our country. And that's why I am standing to lead the Liberal Party and to become the next Prime Minister of Canada.
Mark Carney, the perceived frontrunner, called the Trump threat the worst crisis of our lifetime.
I know how to get through crises. I know how to build a strong economy. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. And in a crisis, there are things that you can't control. But you have to focus on the things that you can control. We are the masters in our own house, and I know that we can control our own economic destiny.
But Mark Carney's night on that debate stage in Montreal will be remembered for a gaffe. As the candidates were discussing Canada's role in the Israel-Hamas war, Carney said he was in agreement with Hamas, leading Chrystia Freeland to jump in and explain that no, the Liberals do not support Hamas. And Carney then corrected his error.
We'll agree on Hamas on a 2-state
No, we don't agree with
solution.
Hamas. No, we're against
Yes,
Hamas,
we're against
absolutely.
Hamas, we are. And we're in favor of a 2-state solution.
After the debate, during a question and answer session with news reporters, Carney was asked whether his French is where it needs to be to be Prime Minister of Canada.
I'll answer you. You asked me in English. I'll answer in English. I said that we all were in agreement against Hamas, or at least the intention. No, I look forward, if I'm selected as Liberal leader, I look forward to having a debate avec Yves François Blanchet et Pierre Poilievre dans la langue française. Et ce qui est, sorry, I'll answer in English. I look forward to having a debate with them in French.
But if that happens at all, it will have to wait a little while. First, there is another Liberal leadership debate. Tonight, it's in English, and it once again will be held in a film studio in Montreal. Former CBC news anchor Hannah Thibodeau will be the moderator. A debate is scheduled to last for 2 hours. It airs at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And then the winner of the Liberal leadership race will be announced on March 9th.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, talking about some of the policy proposals from the Liberal leadership frontrunner Mark Carney, who says, Professor, he would kill the consumer carbon tax and, quote, have big polluters pay Canadians to make their green choices while paying their fair share for emissions. He also is proposing some kind of carbon border adjustment mechanism, a tariff or a quota on the carbon content of imports. What do you think of these ideas?
Well, this really did prove to me, prove to me that Mr. Carney is not going in a different direction from the Trudeau administration. All he's doing, again, to use my phrase from before, they're rebranding and rebottling the old policy. I'll explain this. This idea, I think this policy is dishonest. What they're doing is they're taking the carbon tax, which is downstream retail. We see it at the retail, meaning at the pump we see it because it's added onto the price. We can see it. And we see it on our gas bill or our oil bill. Everybody sees it. It's visible because it's downstream where it hits us, the end consumer. All he's doing is taking that tax and moving it upstream to producers like oil and gas companies, and then where it'll get embedded in the price so that by the time it gets passed on down from the oil companies that dig the oil out of the ground, then they sell it to the refineries, who are not the same companies, by the way. And then the refineries refine it, and then they pass it on and sell it to the gasoline stations. So now you will no longer see the carbon tax. It'll get embedded in the price of the product. The price of the product will go up because the tax must be paid upstream. This idea, which is what he's saying, and this is dishonest, I'm sorry, but it is, saying we're going to make them pay, not you. Well, come on, Carney, come on. Every company in the world.
One way or another, we're going to pay, whether it's downstream or upstream. Upstream will make its way downstream, right?
Yeah, Rob, let me say it more bluntly. Every company passes on every cost that it has as part of doing business, including corporate income taxes, wages, cost of goods sold, because that's how they cover their costs. If they don't cover all their costs, they lose money. If a company loses money consistently year after year, it goes out of business. So it's got to. Every last company, large, medium, small, passes on every last cost of doing business, whether they're taxes or wages or plant and equipment. It doesn't matter. You got to cover your costs. So all he's doing is disguising or hiding the carbon tax by moving it upstream so it gets hidden into the price of the good, so then he can say, you're not paying. You, the consumer, are not paying. Of course we're paying. That's dishonest. That is dishonest.
What about this idea of some kind of carbon tariff? What do you make of that?
When I heard that, I just about laughed. I thought, oh, my God, here we go again. This is good old-fashioned protectionism. What's the carbon tax going to fall on? It's going to fall on foreign goods coming into Canada. Who pays tariffs? I keep saying this. A tariff is a tax on we, the people. If the Canadian government imposes the tariff, not Trump in the States, if the Canadian government imposes a tax, I don't care whether they call it a carbon tax tariff or a Donald Trump, we hate Donald Trump tariff. I don't care what we call it. We can call it kumquats and purple marigolds in the moon.
Save the planet tariff. We pay it.
Yeah. So it's a tax on us to protect us from foreign competition so that domestic producers can put their prices up higher like our phone companies have been doing for years to exploit us. That's a bad policy. It will hurt us, ordinary people. Anytime you protect, you allow the domestic companies to charge a higher price, like Canadian Airlines. It allows, like the supply management allows the farmers in dairy and poultry to charge a much higher price than they would if they didn't have that protectionism. That's all protectionism is. It's a tool to protect local Canadian producers to charge higher prices to Canadian consumers and exploit us and discriminate against us.
Okay. Very interesting discussion today. We'll pick it up next week. Great to hear from you.
My pleasure, Rob. Thank you.
Next week is supposed to be Tariff Day, by the way. March 4th will be next week. We may be getting hit with tariffs 1 week from today, Professor. So we'll have a lot to talk about that day, I think. Thank you again. Speak soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Yeah, that's Professor Ian Lee. He's with the Sprott School of Business, Associate Professor there at Carleton University.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Yep, time for the Newsday panel. Post-debate edition or pre-debate edition. Gary Keller is Vice President of Strategy Corps. Welcome back, Gary.
Good day, Rob. How are you?
I'm great. Great to hear from you. Ashton Arsenal is back with us. He's partner at Crestview Strategy. Good to hear from you, Ashton, as well. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Rob.
And Ashton, what did you think of the French language liberal leadership debate?
Yeah, so full transparency, I don't speak French. But apparently, Mark Carney's French is so bad that he can't tell the difference between endorsing Hamas and condemning them, which is not a great spot to be. So lots of ridicule on that one this morning. Look, based on what I've seen and, based on some clips and some translated bits that I had the pleasure of reading, it didn't really seem like there were many fireworks coming out of that debate. It's possible that changes this evening when everyone's in English. Now, again, I'm a horrible judge on the language dynamics. It seems like Karina Gould's French is pretty good. It seems like Chrystia Freeland's French is pretty good. But beyond that, the entire affair seemed rather muted, and nobody was really taking any swings, which I find a bit bizarre, particularly if your name isn't Mark Carney. And so, look, it's a leadership campaign, not terribly surprising, but what struck me the most was how little content there was, and that goes for the frontrunner and Mr. Carney. Clear to me that he's playing it really safe at this point, and I'm not really sure how you could have followed along with that debate and come out with any other understanding of what Carney would do as prime minister. So not much to report, bro.
Not much to report. Okay, Gary, what did you think, generally speaking, of this French language leadership debate?
Well, like Ashton, I am not fluent in La Langue de Molière, but I did see a rating this morning from, I believe it was Le Journal de Montréal, who rated the four candidates not just in the content, but also on their ability to speak French. And Frank Baylis, who is from Montreal, represented a Montreal area riding in the House of Commons, is fluently bilingual. No surprise, scored the highest on his ability to speak French, but also scored the highest in his content that he delivered. Karina Gould was a close second. As noted, she is a product of bilingualism in Ontario schools, and she was able to prove her ability in French as well. Freeland was third, and Carney was ranked dead last by that media outlet in Quebec. So far be it for me to judge. I'll take my cues from those who actually, are fluent in French to speak. In terms of the content of the debate, I agree with Ashton. I was saying last night on TV that, Chrystia Freeland has got some haymakers here if she has any interest in being competitive in this race, and there were no haymakers thrown whatsoever. So it gets the feeling to me like this is a bit of a coronation, and that, people like Freeland and others may be pulling their punches a bit in order to maybe have a position in a future Mark Carney, whether it's short-lived or not, a government or a cabinet. And I think that was the reality of last night. We'll see what happens tonight, of course.
Right. I would just note in today's Montreal Gazette, Tom Mulcair, has an opinion piece there, and he doesn't have high praise for Mark Carney's French-speaking abilities, and he suggests that the big winner of last night's debate was actually the Bloc Québécois. And I was thinking, if I was a Quebecer watching, maybe with the exception of Frank Baylis, but watching the other three, would I see myself reflected in any of these three people as a French-speaking Quebecer? And I think the answer would be no. Now, on Mark Carney and the Hamas flub, he was asked about that by one of the news reporters in the question and answer session. He said, hold on, Dave. You're going to be the prime minister. The question was, you're going to be the prime minister. Is your French really where it should be if you're going to be the prime minister of Canada? And I thought even the answer was hard to listen to. Let's listen to this together here.
I'll answer you. You asked me in English. I'll answer in English. I said that we all were in agreement against Hamas, or at least the intention. I look forward, if I'm selected as Liberal leader, I look forward to having a debate avec Yves François Blanchet et Pierre Poilievre dans la langue française. Et ce qui est, sorry, I'll answer it. I look forward to having a debate with them in French.
I was like, holy cow. I bet you they are too. Aren't you? Like, if you're Francois Blanchette and Pierre Poilievre, aren't you like licking your chops to debate
it's really bad.
Mark Carney in French?
This is really bad. And this might be like the only point of empathy that I will ever grant Mark Carney, because the thought of doing a full-scale political debate in a language that I don't comprehend just seems like an absolute nightmare. So, I'll give him a little bit of grace on that. It's very difficult to do. It's a long-standing must-have in Canadian politics. He clearly does not have it. For the purposes of the leadership, it might not matter, right? So, he's got to achieve that goal first, and then maybe do some very quick brushing up on the French language skills.
Okay. Anything to add there, Gary? Or
yeah, I would just say, we've seen some polling numbers that are specific to Quebec that show a very close tightening of the polls. It was Mark Carney-led Liberals and Yves-François Blanchet and the Bloc Québécois. It'll be interesting to see in the coming days if Quebecers went. And Quebecers, I think, are quite forgiving of people who seem to have tried and are learning and make a real effort. I'm not sure that crosses that boundary. So we might see in the coming days some polling that says maybe not so hot on Carney in Quebec.
Yeah, they could be unforgiving as well if progress is not made. Just ask the Governor General of Canada. Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more and tee up tonight's English language leaders debate. I mean, what are we expecting? More of the same? Because this was more of a friendly exchange of ideas than a serious confrontational debate. Should we anticipate anything that approaches rough and tumble? And happy Jagmeet Singh Pension Day, everyone. Today's the big day. Cha-ching for Mr. Singh. I'll be right back. Back with Gary Keller. He's Vice President of Strategy Corps. Ashton Arsenault is partner at Crestview Strategy. It's our Newsday panel. So tonight it's the English language debate for the Liberal leadership hopefuls. What are you expecting, Gary? Something more rough and tumble or more of the same?
Well, I hope for viewing entertainment it's a little bit more rough and tumble, because that was like a meeting of the Harvard Debating Society last night. I think I still maintain, like, if Chrystia Freeland actually wants to have a shot in this thing, and it's almost gone, but if she wants to have a shot in this thing, she has to throw a few haymakers, whether it's on Carney's ethics, whether it's on the positions he's taken, the flip-flop he's taken, for example, when he said he was going to use emergency powers to get pipelines built in English Canada, and then said we would never do that in French in Quebec. She's got to do something. I mean, she may have already made the decision that I'm going to pull my punches and resist going there, but man, oh man, if you want to have a shot at this thing, you got to throw a haymaker or two.
Okay, what are you expecting tonight? Ashton, what are you expecting?
Yeah, I feel like Gary actually might be onto something there around pulling the punches. It's not something I'd considered before, but let's face facts, right? Look at the fundraising numbers, look at the earned media. It's all Carney all the time. And so if your name isn't Mark Carney, you need to be out there taking big swings on that debate stage tonight. There's literally no excuse to not do so if you actually want to have a chance at winning. And I'm not sure how you can look at this race and not conclude that Mark Carney is cruising towards victory. The other candidates certainly would know that, and I think it's time they start taking some risks as to whether or not they actually will. I don't know. I'll be watching alongside the rest of you.
Okay, yep, that's interesting. By the way, just some breaking political news at the provincial level. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is stepping down. Andrew Furey delivering remarks right now. He's a Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador and is apparently having a news conference right now, and he has announced that he is going to leave politics. So that's interesting. We'll have more details on that. That's the second Atlantic Canadian Premier to announce that. The Premier of your home province, Ashton, Premier King, just announced.
I was going to say there's something in the water over there. Look, always happy to get late breaking news while live on the radio, but that's a little unexpected. I think he's significantly up in the polls. And the last I heard, they were considering actually going to the polls early, but the timing with all of this federal messiness kind of threw a wrench in those plans. So I'd have to get the backstory on that. You know as much as I do right now.
I don't. Yeah, all I know is one social media posting from our parliamentary bureau chief, Cormac McSweeney. Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey is stepping down.
Wow.
Very interesting because he is a Liberal Premier in Newfoundland and Labrador, but has had disagreements with the Liberal government in Ottawa on things like the carbon tax, for just as one example. So,
and was able to get this Churchill Falls deal renegotiation.
That's right.
That was quite a feather in his cap. You'd think that would be a great thing to go in an election on. But that is a very interesting development, Rob.
Okay. It's Jagmeet Singh Pension Day. The Conservatives are making a big deal about this. Mr. Singh qualifies for the MP's pension today. What do you think, Ashton, about how that was used against him by the Conservatives? Was that like fair game or what?
Oh, 100%. And look, it's really a challenge for me to excoriate Mr. Singh more than I have previously. But, on this special day, Rob, I'm going to give it a shot. It's really hard for me to come up with another reason for why he propped up the government for 2+ years, other than to pad his pocket with $2.3 million worth of pension. Under his leadership, the NDP have gotten credit for nothing, despite their best efforts to take credit, and they are less relevant today than they have been, I would argue, in the last decades. They have no strategy, very little talent, and they lack drive and ingenuity across the board, and they seem to solely exist at this point to be an echo chamber for political ideas that have been rendered obsolete by the voting public. So, look, if anything, I think the strategy of going after the pension issue was an exercise in honesty. Mr. Singh is now talking tough about voting at the Liberals. I find that a little bit curious. Where was that courage in October, November, even December? If it all sounds self-serving, that's because it was, and I still believe it is.
Okay. Gary, what do you think?
Rob, it's a little-known fact. If you go to the dictionary and open up to the word feckless, there's a picture of Jagmeet Singh right in there in the dictionary.
You guys.
I mean, this has been one of the weakest leaderships of any Canadian political party in recent history. Ashton has litigated the case against Mr. Singh very clearly. Talk about seizing defeat from the jaws of victory when he could have taken down the government in the fall and taken credit for that. I mean, it's just an example of weak, lily-livered leadership from a political leader. And absolutely the Conservatives are right to point that out, because I can't make the case for why he hasn't otherwise tried to take the Liberal Party down. So, yes, an F for feckless for Mr. Singh.
Okay. All right. When we come back, how about F for Doug Ford? Doug Ford and the Ontario PCs on track to win a third majority government this week after this snap election campaign. We'll talk about that. Election day is Thursday. Day after tomorrow, this will all be over in Ontario.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Ashton Arsenault is with us from Crestview Strategy, where he's a partner there, and Gary Keller's vice president at Strategy Core. Let's talk about provincial politics for a moment. Doug Ford and the Ontario PCs appear well on their way to winning a third majority government this week. Doug Ford called a snap election campaign, saying he needed a mandate from the people to deal with the Trump threat. If it turns out that Doug Ford wins another majority government, why do you think that will be the case? What was the shortcoming of the other parties? Ashton, why don't you go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll certainly be a shock if he doesn't win a majority. And if I'm a betting man, I think the seat count will probably be in the mid to high 80s. It's a very strong mandate, obviously, and I think turnout's going to be criminally low for this election. But I think there are really three things that define the Doug Ford era in Ontario. So, his personal style of governing, which he could sort of call his folksy charm. His pragmatism, I'll call it. He sort of changes his mind all the time and has no issues with reversing previous decisions he's made. That's unusual for a politician. And more importantly than I think anything else, the reason why he's going to win is because he has been blessed by tragically uninspiring and weak opposition party leaders. And so, look, it's not exactly a recipe for success I'd want to write up for myself, but it's Doug Ford's recipe for success. And, hey, it's really hard to argue with the results.
Yeah, it's working for him, I guess. What do you think, Gary, if Doug Ford pulls off the three-peat here, why would that be the case?
Yeah, Doug Ford is a unique politician in the way he approaches and is seen, I think, by the public in a lot of ways. He almost runs like an opposition politician. Somebody says, well, yeah, the government did X or Y. Well, wait till I get a hold of those guys. That's outrageous. That's kind of criminal. Somebody should do something about that. It's part of his populist nature and populist charm that, he seems to be able to benefit from. And I'll agree with Ashton, certainly on leadership style. There was an article a few weeks ago in the Toronto Star talking about feckless again, about Bonnie Crombie's leadership, where she was quoted, I think, in the Toronto Star basically saying, this is a harder job than I thought it was going to be. Well, yeah, no kidding. Being in opposition with a party that doesn't have official party status, money just doesn't come walking in the door. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of organization. And I think that interview really laid bare the challenges that the Ontario Liberals have had under her leadership. As for Merit Stiles, I kind of like Merit Stiles. I like her approach. I think she's been tough on the government, but she's just had no traction whatsoever with the government. And now she is fighting really in a battle for, I think, official opposition status. And there's a good chance that the Liberals and NDP swap places in this election. But Ashton's right. This has been uninspiring leadership from both the Liberals and the New Democrats. And as a result, the contrast with Doug Ford, who's talking tariffs nonstop, I think is very positive for him.
Okay, we'll wait and see once the returns start to come in on Thursday. Again, the day after tomorrow is voting day in the province of Ontario. Thank you so much to the two of you today for being part of the Newsday panel. Great to hear from you. Great to have your insight today.
Great to be with you,
gentlemen. Thanks, Dan. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Ashton Arsenault is a partner at Crestview Strategy, and Gary Keller is vice president at Strategy Core.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day, and today's topic, drug addiction. And here's the question of the day. It's a very straightforward question. We're going to be keeping track of your answers. We want to do this kind of rapid poll style and kind of keep score. And we'll see where things stand at the end of the show if things sway one way or the other. Here's the question. Do you support or do you oppose placing people into drug treatment against their will? Do you support or do you oppose placing people into drug treatment against their will? Yes or no? Why or why not? Do you support or are you against placing people into drug treatment against their will, what's known as involuntary treatment? Let me give you the call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. You can call right now. I'll put you right on the air, 1-833-668-2577. We want to ask you about this today because this is what they're going to do in the government of Alberta, in the province of Alberta. Conservative government led by Premier Danielle Smith. And Premier Smith has promised to push ahead with this ever since the last Alberta provincial election campaign back in 2023. It's been in the works for quite a while. And more details were released this week by the Alberta Premier. She calls it compassionate intervention. And she had a news conference yesterday and said that under her government, they will open 2 involuntary care centers in that province. One is going to be in Calgary, the other is going to be in Edmonton, and to that end, her government is also going to table legislation that could force people to go to drug treatment, even if they don't want to be there. So let's listen to a little bit of what Premier Smith said yesterday. Here's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith.
Despite this positive trend, too many of our friends and loved ones are still at risk of serious harm from their addiction or substance use. And we continue to see too much collateral damage in society from drug-fueled violence and crime across Canada. This is the challenge facing our country and our communities because of policies that tolerate and even facilitate addiction. I'm again committing that Alberta will not go down that path. There is no compassion in leaving people to suffer in the throes of addiction. We will not sacrifice our communities or give up on those suffering from addiction.
Now, Premier Smith was joined at this news conference yesterday by a woman by the name of Amy Schiffner, who has a son who struggles with drug addiction. And Amy Schiffner said she supports this approach, involuntary drug treatment. Let's listen to Amy Schiffner.
I should have the ability to ask for my son to receive secure addiction treatment as one would for a loved one facing psychiatric challenges. An individual in active addiction typically do not believe they need help. They will insist they are fine and plan to get clean soon, yet this is often not possible without significant intervention. Today, I feel hopeful. I am grateful for Alberta's government because they have acknowledged the growing crisis in Alberta and are committed to proactive programs aimed at saving our loved ones. I believe compassionate intervention could break the cycle of addiction, repeated treatment, incarceration, homelessness, and the ultimate fear of death.
Also at this news event, Earl Thiessen, Executive Director, Oxford House, a drug treatment center in Calgary, who also supports involuntary treatment as well. Let's listen to this.
Is it a compassionate approach to step over people on the street and allow them to die in front of us? Turn our heads and ignore the obvious because it's their right? No, it's not. And for those that say it is, you've never been on the other side of the phone, listening to a mother or father crying, begging for help for their children, asking why nothing can be done to help their child, who is wandering around aimlessly in constant danger of death, unable to make that decision for themselves. I have been on the other end of these calls more times than I care to remember. It's devastating. It's time for us as a society to take the direction of compassion and caring and have proper, secure, safe facilities to stabilize and provide the opportunity to heal.
So it's pretty powerful testimony from those two. There are quite a few, however, on the other side who question how effective this approach would be, whether it's legal, or whether it's even ethical. For example, there are important questions here about personal freedom, about liberty, about autonomy. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is totally opposed to it, calls it dangerous and irresponsible to legislate people into any kind of medical treatment. Others say this money would be better spent building facilities to help people who express a genuine interest in accessing drug treatment instead of spending that money forcing people into treatment who otherwise wouldn't want to be there. But it's not just an Alberta thing. Other provinces have explored this. In BC, the NDP government, a government that once supported drug decriminalization, now supports expanding involuntary care for people with drug addiction and other conditions such as mental illness and brain injuries. But if this proves to be a success in Alberta, one could see it being tried in other provinces, maybe provinces, especially where there are conservative governments, like think of Nova Scotia or Ontario. And it could be one of the issues that political leaders at the federal level might be debating soon enough in a federal election campaign. We want to know where you come down on this. So give it some thought and give us a call and share your opinion and tell us whether you support or oppose placing people into drug rehab against their will. Yes? No? Why? Why not? Our call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. Mitchell in Dartmouth up first today. Thanks for calling, Mitchell. What's your opinion?
Hi, thanks for having me. A little
You're
nervous.
welcome.
It's my first time
Well, I
calling into
appreciate
a
that.
radio show ever.
Wow,
was
okay.
just hopped in the car, and I kind of overheard quickly. But so just some background on me: I'm a recovering addict. April 16th, 2018 was my clean date that I started going to Narcotics Anonymous, and I never looked back.
Good for
So
you.
I got some skin in the race. I've spent time in rehab facilities, and I actually didn't know about this. I heard about this and called immediately. I think it's wrong. I don't think that people who don't want help typically don't try like in those settings. And also, I think there's something about just pulling people off the streets and putting them like into a center. I was in a rehab center in New Brunswick called Portage Atlantic as a kid, and they had a program there called Open Custody where kids could be sentenced there instead of jail. And there's a big group of kids in that center that would go there because they wanted to go there. But then there was a group that was sentenced there, and they would work against one another. The people that didn't want help would impact negatively the people that did want help. And it would fight against each other. Addicts have always only gotten better, in my opinion, when they've wanted to get better. And then I worry about, too, the people that are involuntarily put into these centers that have an opioid problem. And while they're in there, their tolerance changes to this drug, and they never wanted to get clean. And then they're going to leave the center, and the first time they do drugs, they're going to overdose and die because their tolerance is different when they went in and they wanted help.
Okay. So you don't think it'll work?
I don't think it'll work at all, and I think this is something we'll talk about in 25 years. That was a mistake. I think we'll look at it almost as badly as we look at the residential schoolings. You're taking people's freedoms away. You can't just can't take people off the street and just put them somewhere and expect them to change.
All right, Mitchell.
You can't.
Thank you so much for making this your very first call, and thank you for being open about your own circumstances. I really appreciate it. You call back sometime. Coming up next is Sean in Cambridge. Hello, Sean.
Hi, good afternoon.
Do you support or oppose placing people into drug treatment against their will?
I support it, actually. I congratulate the last caller on his mental fortitude and getting himself free. But unfortunately, I don't think all people have that strength. And people talk about the ethics, but is it ethical to allow somebody to harm themselves? Some people, you also have to talk about the mental capacity. I've seen some pretty bad stuff. People who want to get off it, but then they just go right back on it because they don't have the strength, or the people around them are not a good influence. Some people really do need that help, and they need somebody who can give them the strength and the backbone. Quite honestly, a lot of it, I think, depends upon how they go about it. If it's just going to be some halfway house in a city, not going to help. Maybe it needs to be some rural facility far away from the city.
Well, one of the facilities, I can give you some details. One of the facilities will be in Calgary. Another one will be in Edmonton. It'll be a total of 100 secure beds. 100 secure beds, they say. So it'll be a secure environment.
I think
a residential
they need to get them away
treatment
from the city.
Environment. Okay.
I think they need to get them away from the city. They need rural areas, quite frankly, I think.
Okay. But generally speaking, you're in favor of the approach.
I am, because some people, they don't have the strength.
Right.
We don't want.
All right, Sean. I think Sean dropped out there. So let's move along. Let's move along here. I got you, Sean. Thank you. in favor of the approach. Eric in Halifax. Hello, Eric.
Hey, good afternoon, Rob.
Hi, Eric. What do you think?
50-50 on this one, and the reason
50-50.
why, because I have to take drugs. I mean, I have an anxiety problem and I have a seizure problem, so
Right.
I have to be on these things. I'm not addicted to them. I was given on the advice of a doctor, but I'm also opposed because I don't think people should be given drugs if they don't, if they don't want them, if they don't need them. And it's a very, very tight rope we walk here on that particular subject. But like I said, I need them. I mean, I don't think I'm addicted, but if I didn't need them, I wouldn't do drugs.
Right. But let's say somebody who is a hardcore addicted to illegal drugs, like to the point that they're having a really tough time. Like they're down and out, like they can't hold a job. They can't be contributing to society. Their family is at their wit's end trying to deal with things, maybe committing crimes or whatever. Should you be able to take that person and put them into drug treatment, even if they don't want to go there?
No, I don't think it's up to the individual. You just can't force somebody to do something that they don't want. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, it's just a hard.
You would be against the scenario that I just outlined, okay? Because that scenario is more what we're talking about than what you're talking about.
They should be forced to do something that they don't want to do.
Okay, thank you, Eric, for weighing in. You've got us all off to a great start here. It's Talkback. We're talking about involuntary treatment. This is something the Alberta government has promised during the last provincial election in that province to do. And now it's doing it. It's announcing 2 facilities. Will open probably around 2029. It's going to introduce legislation that will make all of this legal to do. It's sure to be challenged in court. I would anticipate a court challenge on charter grounds on this. I just want to know, are you for it or against it? Putting people into drug treatment even if they don't want to be there.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about involuntary drug treatment. Do you support or are you against putting people into drug treatment programs against their will? The Alberta government is moving in this direction. So is the BC government. Other governments are thinking about it. Yes, no, why not? Right back to the phones. We're keeping track of your answers. Matt is in Alberta. Hello, Matt. Hi, Matt. Are you there?
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Yeah,
yes, I'm here. Good morning.
What do you think?
I think yes.
Yes, okay. And why?
I believe that they should be, here's a little bit of anecdotal evidence for you. I think unless you've seen it, unless you've witnessed it, then you don't have a great idea of what actually is happening. Recently, I was in downtown Vancouver for a conference, and for whatever reason, we spent most of our time on East Hastings. And as a compassionate person, you can rank the addictions, it seems like, in 3 categories. And I don't want to be ignorant here by saying you can have your beginner zombie, medium zombie, and full zombie. And this is a tragedy to see these people that are affected that way. They're basically selling their souls. In the afternoon, you'd see them having little yard sales, selling whatever they have, either tricking themselves out or whatever. Followed that by, I went to Switzerland, then Vienna, then Salzburg. And I asked with my father-in-law, he's Swiss, I said, why don't I see any of this downtown Lucerne? He said, well, the people have lost a little bit of their civil liberties. And, they're asked, well, how can we help you? We're gonna move you off of here, and we're going to put you into some type of treatment facility. And that's the difference. There wasn't any of that on the streets in Switzerland. There was in Vienna and Austria, so in Salzburg. And so I asked, I've always thought that. I've Googled what BC Coroner's report. You're looking at 2,700, 3,000 people die there a year. And it's an absolute tragedy. And from a farmer's perspective, I looked at these souls that are in downtown Vancouver. I mean, it is bad. They've got infections, untreated.
Oh, yeah.
It's the only thing, Rob, I think that a person you have an issue that you're going to have to deal with if something like this does take place, I agree with one of the previous callers, finding a spot in rural, which obviously, as you mentioned, that's not going to happen. But there is a risk that you might lose people, getting them coming out of that recovery process. I'm not a doctor, but there's a chance that you could lose them. But what are your options? If you've seen what goes on in downtown East Hastings,
I have.
Those
I've been there. I've seen it with my own two eyes. Yeah. I have traveled there to see it with my own two eyes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for sharing your opinion today. Bill is in Kitchener, Ontario. Hello, Bill. What's your opinion on forced drug treatment?
Well, I'm against it, and then after hearing that, I'm for it. But I think whenever there's this kind of decision where the government says we're going to take you and put you somewhere, there has to be a lot of what would you call it? Buffers to be able to do something like that. Because if you know who Wendy Williams is, she was a big gossip talk show, really successful. Her husband cheated on her. She went off the deep end drinking, and somebody moved in, put her away, and she can't even access her money right now. So I understand, the souls, and, I'm a compassionate person, but what about the millionaire that, because it's not just those people. And I mean, the worst, I understand that. Maybe if they're breaking the law, if they broke the law, okay, put them in one of those instead of throwing them in jail.
Okay,
right?
Okay. So just to nail you down, because I want to keep track, yes and no, for people who are for or against. You've heard kind of both sides. Are you for it or against it?
I know, because what comes after?
Right,
what
don't
comes
know.
After
Okay,
that?
I'll put you down 50-50. You might not be the only one struggling with it. It's very, very complex issue, sir. Thank you. Back right after the news.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about involuntary drug treatment today. Involuntary. In other words, placing people into a drug treatment program even if they don't want to be there. Do you support that, or do you oppose that? Yes or no? Why not? We're just keeping track of your answers today as well. 1-833-668-2577. We just want to see if any trend emerges at the end of Talkback today. In Harriston, Ontario, Bill, you're on the air. What's your opinion, Bill?
Well, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, Bill. Thanks for calling.
Okay, it's great. What a coincidence, because I was listening to the CBC there, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. It could have been on the PRX, what they had there. But apparently, in Washington State, they have that.
Okay.
And it's called Richard's Law. And it was named after this guy that had a really bad addiction, and his friend tried to get him into rehab and couldn't do this. But anyway, they rallied the state. They did whatever. But like I say, in Washington State, they have it, and it's called Richard's Law. And they put people in these to get cleaned up. Unfortunately, the guy who it was named after, and he's actually on the podcast, ended up dying of an overdose, because once you go and you get clean, you come out, you do the same amount of drugs, and you overdose because you don't have that, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tolerance.
Immunity.
Tolerance.
Thank you. You don't have the tolerance.
A previous caller mentioned that. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. It's no different than, for instance, you stop drinking beer or you stop drinking alcohol, for a year, and then you have 3 or 4, you're wired. So that's what happens. But like I say, your listeners and to yourself there, I just happened to be listening to it, so you may want to Google that up or something like that and see how it's working.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so generally speaking, if they did this in Ontario, for example, Doug Ford is not a big believer in some of the approaches to drug addiction that have been happening in Ontario, and he's reversing course on a lot of them. What if he said, I'm going to pass a law that will force severely addicted people into drug treatment even if they don't want to be there? What would you say about that? Is that something you would support, or would you be against something like that?
Oh, yes, I would, because
you would?
sir,
Okay.
Yes, I would. If you know anybody that's on this stuff, You don't want them in your house, even if it's your kid or your best friend, because these people are liars and thieves. And like your other callers were saying, they will steal and sell anything to get their drugs, and they don't care who it's from. On the other hand, I believe that if you end up in court, let's say we'll use a random number 3 times because of your addiction and stealing, then you go. Because we have to have a certain amount, a certain limit that then you've got to go. Because look what it's doing to our society. I mean, China's killing us, man. You know, and we've got to do something because these people don't want to be on these drugs. But I'll tell you something. You try this crap once or twice, you love it. And you see how easily it is to get addicted. It's easy. And like I live in a town, they're everywhere. It is everywhere, man. I mean, I could walk down the middle of the road and see people just freaking. And you'd think, you know, that doesn't happen.
It's kind of sad to see, isn't it?
It is.
It's sad to see.
Your other callers were saying, you know, go north type of thing. Well, that seems like a good idea, but I mean, where do we put? We're going to have tens of thousands of people in these facilities. And if we don't have enough money for jails, how are we going to do this?
All right, Bill. Thank you for your call, Bill, and sharing your perspective. David tells me in Washington State it's called Ricky's Law. Ricky's Law. People who are declared a danger to themselves or others can be involuntarily detained to a secure detox facility. Allie in Calgary, what do you think about it, Allie? The very idea of it. What do you think of it? Are you in favor of it or are you against it?
I'm absolutely in favor of it for a whole bunch of reasons. And the first reason is I lost my daughter to the battle. So I'm somebody who comes from a total compassionate side. Never would I have allowed her to be homeless and suffer on the streets, but that doesn't mean she wasn't suffering in our own home. It is a deplorable disease. It is full of shame. It is full of guilt. We need to do something because I'll tell you what we're doing now isn't working. We're losing 7 souls a day just in the city of Vancouver. The Lower Mainland is in Vancouver. I'm from BC, and you know I got to tell you, it's amazing to me. What we're doing right now isn't working. So for those of us that think, you know, maybe this isn't the right approach, I think we need to think again because what is the right approach? If money was no object, what would we do? I mean, that's the tough question, isn't it? Because we don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer. But what we're doing now, allowing people to freeze in the streets to get their fix, it's not working. We wouldn't let it happen to a Cocker Spaniel, but we're letting it happen to humans. It's terrible. We need to do something. These people deserve compassion. And I will say, you know, I listened to the last caller, and I love what he said about Ricky's Law. But what he said that really kind of resonated with me was the relapse and death. And that is exactly what happened to my daughter and my niece, unfortunately. Both were clean, and both were waiting for help in between being sober and getting a bed in rehab. And that's a major, major problem that people aren't aware of. So my daughter was clean, sober, and awaiting. She was 38 days waiting for her bed and died relapsed because they do not have the tolerance anymore to the fentanyl. But this isn't new. Like, this is something that the medical society is very aware of how the deaths are occurring. The person that's in active addiction is not generally the person dying. It's the people that have been struggling to get clean that then relapse and take that same dose, and there's zero tolerance to fentanyl or opioids at that point. But I just know that I'll tell you, over my dead body, watching people sleep on the streets and freeze and starve and be dehydrated and have no self-worth, and people reluctant to help them because they believe it's a choice. I'll tell you right now, if you believe that this is a choice, then you need to get educated. Because this is not a choice. Nobody would choose this. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for your time. All the best to you. I'm Rob Snow. Come and join the discussion here, will you? We're talking about involuntary drug treatment. That's our topic for the day. And whether you support or whether you're against putting people into drug treatment programs against their will. Involuntary drug treatment. They're going to press ahead with this in the province of Alberta. Other provinces considering it. What do you think about it? 1-833-668-2577. Join the discussion on Talkback.
Hello. 1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We have 2 lines available for you. We'd love to fit you in before the top of the hour. 1-833-668-2577, our call-in line. We're talking about involuntary drug treatment and whether you support or oppose the idea of putting people into drug treatment, even if they don't want to be there, forcing them into a drug treatment program. Would you support that? Yes or no? And then just a brief explanation on your position. Allison in Calgary, thank you for calling, Allison. What's your opinion? Are you support it or are you against it?
So I am against it.
You are,
so
okay.
I'm a mental health professional, and I have some experience working with people in addiction, as well as just personal, friends, family, just experiences with addiction. And what I know about addiction is a lot of times it is rooted in, deeper mental health issues, trauma. And I fear that with this type of program, there's not going to be a focus on really healing the roots of where some of these addiction issues are coming from, especially for individuals who aren't ready to participate in that. So I wonder about, when we look at the research, it shows that mandatory rehab programs are not always effective. And then I also just echo the concerns about relapse after a program like this.
Yeah, another one of the concerns that has been raised by people who have a lot more expertise in this than I do is that the money would be better spent. I mean, it's a lot of money. They're committing $180 million to these two facilities for 100 beds. So would that money be better spent on providing spaces for people who have expressed a genuine desire to access a drug treatment program, as opposed to forcing people into a drug treatment program who maybe don't want to be there in the first place? Because one of the big problems right now in trying to deal with the drug crisis in the country is people say, I'd love to get help, I'd love to get sober, I'd love to clean up my life, and they're told, okay, we can put you in a place 2 months from now, 3 months from now, by which time it may be too late for them, and that they're off and they've relapsed or whatever the case might be, right?
Exactly. There's already so much lack of support for people who are looking to get help. And I think redirecting those funds into providing better supports for the people who are ready to do the work, because it is hard work. It's not easy to get out of addiction. And so really providing those people good supports and long-term supports to prevent relapse, I think, is so necessary. And I just don't see how this type of program could be that far-reaching. And in that sense, it almost becomes another harm reduction approach.
Okay, Allison, thank you for your call today to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Dan, you're on the air. What's your opinion, Dan?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. Would you support or oppose the idea of putting people into drug treatment against their will?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with it, for sure.
You don't agree with it, okay? All right, why is that?
No, I don't think the government should force anybody into doing anything.
Okay.
If you want to get help, you'll get help. But I'll take it another step further. One time there was Christian conversion therapy for gay people, right?
Yes,
so then like transgender people. So is she going to say now transgender people have mental issues, so we have to lock them up? You can't overstep everything. You know what I mean? If people want help, they'll get help. But once you start reaching it out and saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this because I don't like it, it can't work. It doesn't work. Christian conversion therapy didn't work for gay people. So, no, I disagree with this. If you want to get help, you'll get help.
Okay.
And yeah, you know what?
Right.
It might make the parents feel better.
Okay.
But what did you like? You know what I mean? Like, I know people that take care of their adult kids because it makes them feel better, but they're not really helping them. They're just making the situation worse. But you can't force people into treatment if they don't want to go into treatment. You know what I mean? And then when does it stop? When does the overreach stop? Because we all know how Daniel Smith feels about transgender people. Is she going to lock them up next? Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Personally, I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Well, you never know. You never know. Until you walk in those shoes, you don't know.
Okay.
Until you walk in those shoes, you don't know. Anyway, I
Dan?
feel like you shouldn't.
Shouldn't be allowed. Okay, Dan, thank you. I appreciate your opinion, sir. Why don't we stop here? And Abe in Alberta will get to your call. Just hang in there a few more minutes. Abe will get to you right away. And anyone else who wants to call today, join the discussion on forced drug rehab. Involuntary treatment. Government of Alberta calls it compassionate intervention. Abe in Alberta. Hello, Abe. What's your opinion?
Hi there.
Hi.
This is a really difficult question you're asking. Drugs and drug abuse is a really difficult thing. For example, should we help only those that are genuinely interested, drug addicts that are genuinely interested in getting help? Well, I can tell you from personal experience from people around my life, in my family, that I doubt if there's a drug person that wants to get help, and I doubt if there's a genuinely get help, and I doubt if there's a drug person who genuinely wants to make the choice to not take drugs. It's so complicated for people, no matter what age you are, when you get hooked on drugs, especially some of the drugs that are out there that psychologically and physically hook you. Oh, my heart goes out to them, but I just focus on one age group that I think we need a law like this for, and that's for any kid that hasn't reached 18 years of age. Parents should be able to force the kid into care. Will it help them? I can tell you, I don't think it'll help them a lot, but they should be allowed to. Parents don't know what to do. Grandparents don't know what to do. They take their kid to the doctor. They've given them, for the fifth time, they've given them a shot to take them out of the drug stupor they're in to save their life. And so you take them to the hospital, they stabilize them, and then the doctor asks the patient, the drug addict, do you want any further help? The kids could be 14, 15 years old. If they say no, that's it. They get no help. I don't know if the doctors can help a kid that's not willing, that's on drugs, but I think at least until they're 18 years old, we should be there as a society, and kids shouldn't be in control of that decision. And parents or grandparents should be able to.
Well, let's talk about adults. Let's talk about adults. According to the news reports, the government is going to create some kind of commission. It would be made up of lawyers and doctors, members of the public, maybe elders from First Nations communities. And you could make a request, either family members or maybe it's law enforcement, and the commission would have to decide and make a recommendation on whether the person should be committed to a drug treatment facility. And if the commission says, okay, Abe, you're off to a drug treatment facility, that's where you're going to go even if you don't want to be there. What would you think of that?
I think the minute they finish the treatment, they get back out to go right back on drugs.
Okay, so you don't think it'll work?
It won't work. My sister-in-law and her husband, they're long gone now. They died prematurely, but we tried so many different things to start them over again, to give them support. This is, they're odd individual. We're just working and hoping that the latest one in the family will work their way out and want help somewhere and become genuine. In the mid-20s now, but become genuine and want to change their lives. But, and all the experts we've talked to, they all told us the same thing, and they keep telling us, until the individual genuinely wants help, they're not going to accept the help, no matter what you do to them, where you put them.
All right. Abe. Thank you. I want to fit in one more call before the news. I appreciate your call to Chester, Nova Scotia. Robert. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how are you today, Rob?
I'm good, Robert. What's your opinion on this, sir?
I think, it comes down to can a person make a decision or not for themselves, right, in all of this? And if that person is, unable to make a clear decision for themselves, we should be intervening. I mean, it's no different than, Granny in the kitchen cooking a sandwich, and we have to intervene as a family and say, okay, great, she's going to burn the house down now, right? At some point, what is that level of intervention required, right?
Okay, right. The government of Alberta calls it compassionate intervention, that to not intervene when somebody is so clearly so far gone because of drugs they're not thinking clearly, they're not thinking rationally, that the compassionate thing to do is intervene, and you agree with that?
Absolutely. You're darn right.
Okay.
At least do
All right.
something. If we can save one person, that's all we can do. That's better than nothing.
All right, Robert. Thank you. Thank you for having your say. Thank you for a very interesting discussion in the first hour. Hour number 2 is coming up right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
We've been talking about drug addiction and, in particular, involuntary treatment, forced drug treatment. We've been asking, do you support or oppose putting people into drug treatment against their will? Yes or no? Why not? We've been keeping track of your answers as well. Let me see here. We took, in the first hour of the program, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 calls. On the no side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. On the yes side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. So pretty much split right down the middle. Isn't that something? Let's go to Al in Calgary. Hello, Al. What's your opinion here, Al? Hi, Al. Are you with me, Al, in Calgary? No, Al's not there. That's okay. Let's go to Daryl is up next then. Let's try Daryl. Hi, Daryl. Are you with me?
Hi, Rob. Yes, it's Daryl,
Yeah, hi,
actually.
Daryl.
But, my...
I'm sorry, your name is? I'm sorry, your name?
Beryl.
Beryl.
With
Okay,
a B.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yeah. My answer to that question is no. I think our money could be better spent to people that want the help, and they can foresee a future perhaps by getting into this program. Whereas when you force someone to do it, they're going to fight all the way, make it disruptive for others that it might work out for. I just, ever since the premier put this on her platform when she was running for election, I just had hated it, that idea
really?
to force people, because I'm afraid that they're going to go back again. They don't want it. They have to stick it out. Then they go back on the street and start using again. I mean, it's not a successful plan as far as I'm concerned. But the people that do want help, I think they need it. The woman that called that said, her daughter,
Her daughter died waiting 38 days. Yeah, 38 days waiting.
And if there was a bed for her at that time, because she really wanted it to work for her to come clean. And so I think that's all. I just want to say no. And
okay, I appreciate it, Beryl. Thank you. Great to hear from you today.
Rob.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Sarah is up next. Hi, Sarah. What's your opinion here, Sarah?
Hi. I don't think that this is a good idea, and I'm interested to see how they would actually implement this, because right now, the only way someone could be admitted against their will involuntarily is if they're a direct threat to themselves or to the public. So if they say they're going to kill themselves, you can have them taken to the hospital, assessed by a psychiatrist, and then released later, or if they're a threat to somebody else. So it's going to be interesting to see how would that even be implemented, given those protections. And then who are they going to, is it just everybody who has an issue, or are they going to specifically direct it to, if you've committed a crime, you have to do this as part of your sentence, versus, non-criminal individuals, regular people. And then there's the incapacitation argument. Someone who's on drugs is temporarily incapacitated. They're not permanently incapacitated, as the granny, analogy there. So, temporary, after the drugs wear off, you're able to make your own decisions. So I find this a really slippery slope, and I'm not for it. I would love to see this given towards people who are actually looking for help, but can't afford it, or are on wait lists that are months long.
Oh, that the funding would better be directed for people who have shown a genuine interest in seeking drug treatment,
right,
as opposed to those who have not, or those who cannot afford it. Yeah,
they might have to work. They can't really afford it, and they can't afford the time. Those supports would be. I think the funds would be better spent supporting those individuals who have, children who have, or the only one working, and have these issues. rather than force individuals who don't want to go.
Okay.
And again, it's going to be difficult to force them, in my opinion.
All right, Sarah, lots to think about there. Thank you for your call. Moving along, Tony up next. Hi, Tony. You're on the air. What's your opinion, Tony?
Hey, Rob. I'm in favor of it, 100%.
You are? Okay. All right. 100%. Why is that?
100%, because I think all these people that say no should. I'd like to know how many of the ones who are against it have had a family member close to them, have lost a family member close to them, and then there's no more chances, right? So
okay.
I think we need to do something. I think we need to try it. Why not? Let's try and help these people. I do agree that some of the people that you force in are going to go right back when they get out. Some of them will, but I think one or two will make a better decision, once they're forced down that path. And I think we should do that.
Okay. Even if it just helps a few people, it will have been worth it, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean,
yes? Okay.
I don't know. Like, have you lost a son or a brother or anyone close to you? Imagine sitting at home.
No, personally.
Just imagine you go home on a Friday after work, after a hard day, hard day, and you sit down, you turn the news on, you have a beer, you want to relax, and you get a knock on the door, and it's the police to tell you that your brother just died, right? Like, there's no coming back from that, Rob. It's hard for the people that have to go through that, right?
Okay, yeah, I can appreciate that.
Okay. And I just want to add on that it's a mental health issue, right? Like, the people that are doing the drugs, they're suffering, they're mentally unwell, and then that, when your brother dies, that can be passed on to you now. Now you can inherit that mental health issue, right? Like, I don't know. It's a tough subject. There's no doubt about that, and everybody seems to be split on it. So.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate you sharing your opinion and sharing your perspective, Tony. Really do. And keep those calls coming, everyone. Lots of time to take your call here in hour number 2 of Talkback, where we're talking about involuntary treatment or forced drug treatment, and asking you if you support it or are you against it, putting people into a drug treatment program if they don't want to be there. So, I was thinking about this topic today in advance of our show. And I don't think that this whole issue, drug addiction, the opioid crisis, the scourge of drug addiction, this public health crisis, I don't even think it came up during last night's Liberal leadership debate. It probably won't come up tonight either, when those 4 candidates debate all the issues in English. And yet, it's one of the biggest public health issues facing the country. When it comes to the opioid crisis, it's killed 50,000 Canadians in just the last 8 years. And a lot of the policies that we are seeing now at the provincial level, some of the ideas that we're hearing from the Conservative opposition in Ottawa, are really a direct repudiation of everything this Liberal government in Ottawa has believed in, has promoted, has defended, and has enacted over the last decade. For example, in Ontario, where Doug Ford and the PCs are likely headed for another majority government in Thursday's election, Premier Ford is totally opposed to the approach of the Liberals in Ottawa on things like injection sites and safe supply programs. His government is shutting a lot of that stuff down. If you go back to the Harper years, the Harper government didn't want things like supervised injection sites, fought against them. Insight, for example, in the downtown east side of Vancouver, the government fought that all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. Lost, but it fought it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and since then there's been a proliferation of those places in just about every major city in the country. So Pierre Poilievre is kind of carrying on in that way. He's against a lot of these so-called harm reduction measures when it comes to drug addiction, and he has said if he becomes prime minister, he would end funding for a lot of these programs. But on the issue for today and involuntary drug treatment, forcing people into drug treatment against their will, Poilievre has talked about where he stands on that issue. This is what he told news reporters in London, Ontario, in July of last year.
I know you're familiar with Alberta's approach to drugs, which similarly to you is very much against so-called safe supply, but they have proposed a forced intervention and in some cases really using the mechanisms of law to push drug users into treatment under certain conditions. Would you support something like that nationally?
I don't know. I need to study it more. I need to understand how it would work. I want everybody who's on drugs to be in treatment. and rehab to get off drugs. What I haven't been able to figure out is if someone doesn't want to be rehabilitated, can you require them to be? I don't know. I'd like to see some evidence for and against before I make a judgment.
Okay. So that was Pierre Pauli of July of last year. I don't know. I want more information. Can you even do it? Let's go to Joe in Kitchener. Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi. How you doing,
Hi,
Rob?
Joe. I'm good. What's your opinion, Joe?
Rob, this is called Darwinism at its classic best. People that do not want to be rehabilitated will not be rehabilitated.
Okay.
If they want the drugs, give them the drugs. Legalize everything. That's what I want to see.
Legalize everything.
I want to see legalization across the board. I used to be a dope addict. I kicked that to the curb, and now I'm a functioning alcoholic. I don't want anybody's sympathy. I don't want anybody's support. I don't need your help. There's only 3 people that can help me. That's me, myself, and I. Okay? If you can't do that, I don't want to subsidize your own weakness and inability to take care of your own life and take charge of your own life. I don't want to subsidize that. Sorry. I'm dealing with my own crap. I don't need to deal with yours and get taxed for it too. I know it's a harsh reality, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. This is my opinion, and that's what I'm sticking with. If you can't take care of your own ass, why the hell should I have to be stuck doing it too?
All right. I got you, Joe. Thank you. Joe is, everyone's in it for themselves. He's a Darwinist. Gary, up next. Gary is in Kitchener. Hi, Gary.
It's Jerry, Rob, and
Jerry. Okay, thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that, Jerry. Go ahead.
I listen all the time. I am 100% in favor of it.
Okay.
100%, because I'm looking at it at another angle. Okay. Here in Kitchener, with all the encampments, we have a lot of this blatantly on the streets. Okay. And what happens is it eats up resources, healthcare, law enforcement, right? Regional health. So I am 100% for it. Now, yes, you're not going to save every soul. We used to be helping with drug rehab in a shelter, right? And some people who ended up going for the treatment actually came back and they were well. Some relapsed like immediately, but at least if you don't try, it's not going to do anything. And it's better than, finding people sick and on the streets and causing danger, to them and other people. Anyway, that's where I feel.
Jerry, thank you for your call. Appreciate your call today. We'll have to stop here, and more of your calls are just ahead. Kristen, I believe it is up next in Calgary. Hello there.
Hi, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. What's your opinion?
Hi. So I have a few opinions, definitely strong ones.
All right.
From personal experience, just with family members, I've seen for many years all the things that were possible to get them help, and I'm definitely for it.
Okay.
Some people can't think for themselves, and a lot of people can't identify with that, but an addict thinks like an addict, and even if they go get help, they're just waiting to get out the door so they can go get it again. So involuntary can seem like it can make the difference between saving a life or not. Having said that, there should also be regulations in place to protect those people, because there's obviously a lot of to be said about being forced to do something beyond your will. So that makes it inhumane, but to somebody, once they're in that, once they get that, their brain reprogrammed with a lot of support systems and a lot of care, they can kind of get their brain trained, and then they forget about the addiction. And someone has to sometimes be forced to do that because they might have mental health problems that stem outside of the addiction. And no one ever knows how someone got addicted. In a personal case of my sister, she got a kidney disease, and so she was put on fentanyl by hospitals, and she never did drugs before that, and she was addicted for 12 years, and she lost her son, and it took 12 years for her to finally go back to rehab over and over and over again, and she finally is sober now. But it's not in most cases that someone lasts that long. Most people don't have bodies to last that long on drugs like that. So I'm definitely for it.
You are.
I'm
okay. Definitely for it. Okay. Thank you, Kristen, for your call today. To Kevin up next in Preston, Ontario. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, actually, it's Keith.
Keith,
in
okay.
Preston.
All right. Okay.
That's okay.
It's a bit of a challenge today. I'm not sure what's going on. We're getting a few names wrong today, but...
or maybe I'm stammering. I don't know.
That's okay.
However, I am not in favor of mandatory incarceration for drug addicts. And I work with, as a volunteer and a participant in a drug and alcohol program, and have been fortunate enough and blessed enough to be sober for over 15 years. I have seen, I've lived in Nova Scotia, and I have seen down there where people can check into the addiction center in a place called Lunenburg, and they're there of their own volition. They get put on a methadone program, and when they get out, that's the drug of choice is methadone, and there's a heck of a market for it down there. And one young friend of mine, 23 years old, and I'm 80, but a young friend of mine was in and out of rehab so many times, beautiful child, and we buried her about a year ago. She just couldn't stay away from it. She had all the family, all the support, but my feeling is, Rob, that sobriety has to start with me. I have to want it, and I can accept or deny help. So I don't know. It's I'm not saying leave them on the street. Definitely not. Give them the opportunity for rehab. But if they don't accept it, what are you going to do? They're going to be back out in the street.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So it's been very busy today. Lots of opinions on the issue of involuntary treatment or forced drug treatment, whether you support that or whether you're against that, placing people into drug treatment against their will. The reason that we're bringing this up is because the Alberta government is moving in this direction. We just want to know if you think it's the right direction or the wrong direction. 1-833-668-2577. We have 3 lines available, so we'll have no problem fitting you in before the top of the hour on Talkback today. Let's go to David and get his opinion. What do you think, David? What's your opinion on this?
Good afternoon, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. I'm in Calgary. I work in addictions. Last year, I worked in the newer treatment facilities that they've attached to the provincial jails. Everybody who went in there went in voluntarily, and it was awesome. It was absolutely miraculous to see the changes. Now, what we have to remember is when somebody is involuntarily put into care for any reason. I mean, we do this for people who are threatening suicide or having mental breakdowns. We're saving a life. We're giving them opportunity to access treatment that you wouldn't believe that is happening in Alberta. Alberta has amazing residential treatment. So it to me, finding somebody who is close to death and with the toxic drug supply that's in Canada, fentanyl, meth, cocaine, alcohol, when somebody is that addicted and is having that many problems, again, it's Russian roulette, whether they wake up on a daily basis. So somebody who is involuntarily committed for whatever mental health reason gets amazing care. They will be medically detoxed, which is incredibly important when we're talking about alcohol, benzos, cocaine, and fentanyl, and any other opioids. So they will be taken, they'll be treated exceedingly well and given a chance once they are detoxed, what to do, how to continue their treatment. Alberta is very aware of any charter concerns, and I'm sure there will be lots of railing about that. But what I've seen, and having seen both sides of it, having seen people die, and also now having seen people enter recovery who their families thought they had no chance whatsoever, I certainly hope other provinces are taking a very hard look at what Alberta is doing, because we're saving lives here. There's no two ways about it. I've been in recovery for over 30 years, and when I got into recovery, it was cannabis, alcohol, cocaine, pills, psychedelics, and people could last a long time and even function in a job. The drugs that people are taking today and are addicted to, there's no hope of that unless somebody intervenes.
Wow, very interesting. So you've seen turnarounds, success stories.
Massively. Like I said, working in the prisons where guys were in jail, they were given the opportunity to go to treatment, and that is my biggest moment was, why aren't we taking units in provincial and federal jails and turning them into treatment centers? You have your overhead covered. The only thing you have to do is bring in staff. Again, it was completely voluntary. We vetted every person who came in, and once they did, within a week, we saw them engaging. And oftentimes, while they're in jail, they're medicated as well. They have, for whatever reason, or they could have an opioid agonist therapy, Suboxone, something along those lines, methadone, in order to stabilize, but they stay on it because it's more comfortable to be in a horrendous jail environment. Once they go into the therapeutic living unit in Alberta, it's a huge turnaround, and you just see it in their faces. It's absolutely miraculous. I was with a guy at a meeting last night who went through one of those units, and to see the turnaround in this guy's life and his family coming back in, and him being a productive member of society and going back out, it's absolutely awesome. So we've got to do something different in this country. People are dying by the dozens and hundreds every year.
All right. You give us hope, David. Thank you. All right. Let's go to Roger up next. Hello, Roger. What's your opinion here, Roger? Forced drug treatment.
Yeah, the drug treatment thing. I mean, I went back and forth on this in my brain a little bit, but realistically, to me, it just boils down to how else are they going to get help if we don't, get them into some kind of treatment center? I mean, they're going to become burdens on society basically at a certain point, and then it's a choice of, do we help them or do we just let them kill themselves, right? And I'm kind of in favor of helping them out, whether it be involuntary or otherwise. It's great if family can guilt them into it, but if they can't, I'm okay with the government doing it.
You're okay with it. Okay, Roger, thank you for your call. Tim in Okotoks. Hi, Tim.
Hey, how you doing today, Rob?
I'm good, Tim. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion on forced drug treatment, involuntary drug treatment? You're welcome.
Not the last caller, Roger, but the guy before him. Loved what he had to say. Really good information there.
Okay.
To go with that, though, why aren't we charging the people that are responsible for funding all of this stuff? The cartels that when we seize stuff, seize money, seize property, get that to fund those programs. Get the drug companies to fund those programs.
Okay. Not a bad idea. Governments are suing, some of the makers of this, like Purdue Pharma and whatever, who started this whole nightmare so many years ago, right? Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay. Whether the money comes from drug companies or organized criminals, the question is, should you put someone into what basically is a medical program if they don't want the treatment?
Yes, without even questioning.
Without even questioning. Okay. All right. Thank you for your call. Thank you.
Let them see you when they get better and they get out.
Okay. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. We will stop here, take more of your calls.
Hello. 1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Where do you stand on the idea of putting people into drug treatment programs against their will? Anchor in Calgary. Anchor.
Hi, Rob. It's been a long time.
I appreciate
Thank you for
your
taking
call.
my call.
You're welcome.
So, my perspective is a little different. It seems like first we create problems, and then we go around, finding solutions or wanting government to intervene and find solutions for us. First, we don't like government, and then we want more bureaucracy. So, what I mean by that? Look at the vices we promote and make it so easy for everybody and anybody to get it, whether it's alcohol, vaping. By the way, do you know how much of a problem vaping is in junior high schools and in the bathrooms and all?
Oh, yes.
Opioids, marijuana, supervised sites then, fentanyl, easy availability of all that. And now betting. All of this is connected mental health-wise, right? And now we want to create another jail for people that don't want to be necessarily helped. I'm all for people that want to be helped. And I'm all for people that have their loved one and like a child underage that for some reason we take the rights away from parents the moment they turn 18. I'm all for that. As a parent, I'm all for that. Put them in rehab, get them treated. But what happens afterwards? What if they are repeat offenders? Are you going to keep on supporting them? So the question I want to leave you with is, has anybody done any success studies on people that are reformed or so-called reformed and leave after jail time, and how much integration they have in the society? We're creating a jail now. Literally, it's a jail. Whether we want to call it compassionate sites and things like that, but it's a jail. So I'm all for people that want to be helped. And like I said, if I have a loved one, if I have my kids under the age of 18 or just about 18, if overnight, you become 18 and all of a sudden you have no right as a parent, that I find ridiculous. You need to be 21 in certain provinces to buy alcohol, but all of a sudden 18 is a magic number and you have no right as a parent. So that's my 2 cents. I think we make we make problems first. We promote vices, and then we just, as a society, look around. Okay, what can we do now?
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. What an interesting way to look at it. Okay, Chad in Calgary up next. Chad, what do you think about this idea of putting people into drug treatment against their will?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the CRTC rules are on 4-letter words. Can I say hell no?
You could say hell no. Yeah.
Just not the other ones.
It's usually the ones that begin with F that gets us into trouble around here. So let's avoid those.
Well,
okay.
Hell no. A few callers ago, you had a guy who drew a comparison with involuntary treatment for people who are suicidal, and that really crystallized my thinking, because I've been suicidal in the past, and I had arguments with my therapist. I said, look, if you send me for involuntary treatment, that will only make me angrier, and I will probably be more likely to kill myself as soon as I get out. And he said, yeah, I see your point. I won't do that to you. I don't know if you know, there's a United Nations resolution that's called for the ending of involuntary treatment and institutionalization for people with mental health conditions. Canada and the United States are some of the only places in the world that take this paternalistic approach to people and force them into treatment against their will. Now, again, the context here is suicide and not drugs, but I think it's the same thinking. Other places in the world, it's like, you want to kill yourself? Go right ahead. Like, if you want help, we'll give you help. But do you know how many psychologists it takes to change a light bulb?
No, I don't. No.
Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change.
Ah, I see. Okay. I see what you did there. Okay.
And it's, I agree with some of your previous callers that said it probably wouldn't work anyway. Again, hearing the guy do the analogy with forced treatment for suicide just helped me crystallize my thinking that I think that's wrong, so therefore I think this would also be wrong.
Okay, thank you. I would note again, Canadian Civil Liberties Association says it is opposed to involuntary drug treatment. The organization, first of all, claims it's unconstitutional, that it wouldn't stand a charter challenge. And it says everyone has the right to refuse unwanted medical treatment, that it is fundamental to a person's dignity and autonomy. Tom in Kitchener. Hello, Tom.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Tom. What's your opinion?
The opinion is get the bulldozers and get them out from their tents. And
okay.
If there's a problem, give them the treatment, but enough for these tree huggers and everything. We're wasting too much money. So sorry, it's got to be tough.
Okay. You've got to be tough. So you would be in favor of it then, sir? Just so I can put you down one way or the other. You're in favor of it?
Yeah, we'll be in favor of it. Yeah.
You're in favor of it. Okay, Tom, thank you. Well, I don't think it's going to take bulldozers. In the case of the province of Alberta, it's a simple act of the legislature, sir, will bring this into force. And there will be 2 facilities open, probably, they say, sometime in the next 4 years. Of course, if the Smith government lasts that long, it has a bit of a healthcare scandal on its hands right now that it's trying to navigate. We'll be right back and close things down for a Tuesday Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Forced drug treatment or involuntary treatment. Compassionate intervention is what the Alberta government is calling it. We want to know your opinion on it. Brad is in Calgary. I think Brad's going to get the last word today for our callers. Hi, Brad. What do you think?
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Brad.
Well, first, just a couple of things. I think the gentleman, your caller prior to, that was drawing the analogy towards suicide isn't really a proper parallel, because those who are suicidal, and, obviously anybody saying they haven't thought about it would be lying, but no, because it's not affecting society with the cost that this I don't know what you want to call it, this crisis is. Because the people that are on the street that are addicted, I imagine they're suicidal as well to a degree, but the fact is they're causing, look at all the costs to us, through paramedics, through calls, through overdoses, never mind the social costs. So every individual who's suicidal in the world is, who could be susceptible to incarceration, that I don't think that's a proper parallel. Same thing when your earlier caller about transgender and Danielle Smith, everybody's way too paranoid. I wanted to bring up the point, Rob, Polly pointed it out, and the fact is that he doesn't know, he wants more information. And the fact is we don't have much information on it. But what we do have information is on the other side of the coin and how much it costs us. So look in Vancouver and BC, they legalized it. What did that cost their society? And we do see the results of that other extreme, correct? Because legalizing, are they
well, they're backtracking on it now, and it was an NDP government that did that in British Columbia and advocated for the decriminalization of drugs, and then they advocated for the recriminalization of drugs because it did not go according to plan, and now they're embracing this as well, involuntary treatment.
That's my point. You reiterated it. And partisan, enough politics, man. There's way too much in this world right now. We got our own problems to deal with right now here, real time. And I mean, politics are to a degree real time, but we're talking about something that is affecting every day. I drive through Calgary. I see them all over. Not see them. I mean, the poor people. Some people want to do it. Some people don't. But the other side, let's go to bare brass tacks. You had the one guy who says, okay, Darwin, and let him die. Well, come on, look what it's costing us without doing this stuff. What's the other side of it? Legalize everything, legalize. Well, we see what happens when it legalizes, because whether it's NDP, who cares? It was something that was tried. It was quote-unquote scientific. Now our drugs are going worldwide. That has been prescribed. So we know that doesn't work. Am I safe to say that, Rob? I want your opinion.
I would say so. So how do I put you down? You're in favor of involuntary drug treatment.
Why not?
Of
course.
My
point is that I'm in favor is because we see the other side of the coin, Rob, is why not? We see what it does when we legalize it. Let's do it this. I mean, 180 million, give me a break. We pay more of that in ambulance bills to get everybody off the streets in all of Alberta.
You're right. Probably.
Well, guaranteed we are. So,
all right, Brad.
So
thank you.
Everybody's paranoid about trying it. Try it. If it's an abuse of power, then we vote them out.
If it doesn't
they change
work,
the law.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay, I got you, Brad. I love the passion, though. I love the passion of your opinions. I loved all your opinions today. Very far from any kind of consensus today of the how many calls did we take here? 24 calls. We had 12. 13 said yes. And 11 said no. So, it was far from unanimous one way or the other, trying to find any consensus on this. Pretty much split right down the middle. If we had another hour of Talkback, who knows where things would end up. Thank you. Be back tomorrow. Brand new topics and more calls. It'll be Talkback tomorrow on Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow, and this is News Radio.